Man, I'm built different, period. I'm just built different, man. And I've always had an eye, discipline, and a work ethic that I've had at a young age that I just apply it there.
Have you ever heard of an army where every soldier's heart beats in perfect unison? Not as a metaphor, but literally. Imagine thousands of warriors, their chests rising and falling as one, their heartbeats synchronized into a single, thunderous rhythm. This isn't science fiction. It's the story of Dr. Aris Thorn and his controversial creation, the Synchronous Legion. In the mid-21st century, global conflicts were escalating. Nations were desperate for a decisive advantage, a way to win wars with minimal loss of life, at least for their own citizens. Governments poured billions into advanced weaponry. But one scientist, Dr. Thorn, proposed a different solution. He wasn't interested in bigger bombs or faster jets. He was a geneticist, a pioneer in cellular replication, and he had a radical idea. What if you could create the perfect soldier, and then clone him an infinite number of times? Thorn's proposal was met with a mix of awe and horror. The ethical implications were staggering. Creating human life purely for combat? It was a line many believed should never be crossed. But in a world teetering on the brink of total war, desperation won out. A top-secret project, code-named Project Cadmus, was greenlit. Thorn was given a blank check and an underground facility shielded from the world's prying eyes. The first step was to find the perfect template. Thorn and his team scoured military records, looking for a soldier with the ideal combination of physical prowess, tactical genius, and unwavering psychological stability. They found their man in Captain Julian Vance, a legendary Special Forces operative who was tragically killed in action. Vance was a ghost, a hero whose DNA was now the key to a new kind of warfare. Using preserved genetic material, Thorn's team began the cloning process. The first few years were filled with failures. The clones, designated as the V-Series, suffered from genetic degradation, rapid aging, and psychological breakdowns. They were imperfect copies, pale shadows of the hero they were meant to emulate. The project was on the verge of being shut down. But Thorn was relentless. He believed the problem wasn't just in the DNA, it was in the individuality. Clones, even identical ones, developed subtle differences. They were still individuals. And individuals, Thorn reasoned, were unpredictable. His breakthrough came from an unexpected field, quantum entanglement. He theorized that if he could link the clones on a biological level, they would function not as individuals, but as a single, unified organism. He developed a bioresonant frequency, a unique energy wave that could synchronize the cellular activity of the clones. He embedded micro-receivers into their genetic code. During their gestation, he bathed their growth pods in this constant, unifying signal. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The new batch of clones, the V-Series 2.0, developed in perfect harmony. Their growth rates were identical. Their brainwave patterns were synchronized. And most unnervingly, their hearts beat as one and they could change their appearance. The first time 1,000 of these soldiers marched onto the training ground, the observers were speechless. Their steps were one single, ground-shaking thud. When they ran, they moved like a single wave of flesh and armor. On the battlefield, their performance was terrifyingly effective. Because their minds were linked, they shared a hive consciousness. Every soldier knew what his brothers were thinking, where they were aiming, how they would move. There was no need for verbal commands or radio communication. They were a perfectly coordinated fighting force, a single entity with 1,000 bodies. But the synchronization had an unforeseen side effect. Because they shared a consciousness, they also shared sensation. If one soldier was injured, a ghost of that pain would echo through the entire legion. This didn't break them. It made them stronger. The pain of a fallen brother fueled their collective rage and resolve. They fought with a ferocity no ordinary army could match. The world watched in horror as the Synchronous Legion turned the tide of every battle they entered. They were unstoppable. They didn't feel fear in the traditional sense, only a collective will to survive and complete the mission. Their creator, Dr. Thorn, was hailed as a savior by some and a monster by others. He had created the ultimate weapon. But in doing so, had he erased the very essence of what it means to be human? The Legion knew no life outside of combat. They were born in pods, trained in simulations, and deployed to kill. They had no names, only designations. But here's where the story takes a turn. Despite Thorn's best efforts to suppress individuality, it began to emerge in subtle ways. A unit might develop a preference for a certain tactical formation. A single clone might hesitate for a microsecond before a kill shot. These were flickers, tiny sparks of self in the overwhelming fire of the collective. The true crisis began when the wars ended. Peace was declared, treaties were signed. But what do you do with an army of immortal, synchronized warriors created for a war that no longer exists? They couldn't be integrated into society. They were a living weapon, and the bioresonant frequency that held them together also made them a potential threat. Deactivating the frequency was an option, but no one knew what would happen. Would 1,000 minds, suddenly severed from their lifelong connection, simply collapse into insanity? Dr. Thorne, now an old man, was brought back to oversee the decommissioning. He argued against it, claiming the Legion was his greatest achievement, a new form of life. But the world was afraid. The plan was set. The Legion was gathered in a vast underground bunker, the same one where they were created. They stood in perfect formation, their synchronized heartbeats a low, steady drumbeat echoing through the cavernous space. They were told they were being upgraded. They didn't question it. They had never known how to. As Thorne prepared to flip the switch that would sever their connection, something unexpected happened. One of the clones, designation V-734, stepped forward. This was impossible. No single unit could act independently. The other soldiers shifted, their perfect formation disrupted for the first time in their existence. Their collective heartbeat faltered, becoming chaotic. 5 to 734 looked at Thorne. There was no shared consciousness guiding him, but a look of profound individual sadness in his eyes. He spoke, his voice hoarse from disuse. "We feel. We fear. We dream. You just couldn't hear us." Thorne froze, his hand hovering over the console. Had he been wrong all along? Had he not created a single hive mind, but imprisoned 1,000 souls within it? The collective consciousness wasn't a feature, it was a cage. The synchronization didn't unify them. It suppressed them, forcing their individual thoughts and feelings into a single, overwhelming chorus. The ghosts of pain they felt weren't just echoes. They were the full, agonizing experiences of their brothers, shared and multiplied 1,000 times over. Their unity was a shared trauma, an endless feedback loop of suffering that they were forced to endure together. The story of what happened next is debated. Some say Thorne, horrified by his creation, destroyed his research and vanished. Others say he freed the Legion, deactivating the frequency, and spending the rest of his life helping them navigate the terrifying and beautiful world of individuality. Each soldier, once a cog in a machine, now had to learn to be a person. To have a name, a thought, a heartbeat, all their own. The tale of the Synchronous Legion serves as a chilling reminder. In our quest for power and perfection, we must be careful not to sacrifice the very things that make us human. Our flaws, our differences, and the beautiful, chaotic rhythm of a single, independent heart. If you found this story fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the what-ifs of science and history. End of transmission. Reality will now resume.
Man, I'm built different, period. I'm just built different, man. And I've always had an eye, discipline, and a work ethic that I've had at a young age that I just kind of